Welcome back to Doing Football for a very special edition. I kind of like to freewheel special edition. They're all special editions. But today, special guests from Fantasy Stock Exchange, Danny, Corey. Look, if you're coming from their channel to check out our videos, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, make sure you like the video. Boys, welcome. Very excited to have you. What are we going to be talking about today, Jared?
We're looking at some league winners or my guy. These are the guys that we absolutely love this year, and we are going to be taking them way ahead of ADP.
Boys, any opening notes, any plugs that we should be doing right now?
Honestly, if you guys want information on our channel, I'm sure it'll be linked in the description. And as always, my Twitter handle, DannyFootball59. Corey, you can take it away with yours as well.
Yeah, mine's @FootballStock. Doesn't really make any sense, but I thought it was cool when I made it.
Love that.
Should we let the guest start?
Sure.
I have a feeling from my limited knowledge on these guys, I know they'll give you some great information, and it's going to go on for a little bit here
big facts
and get in depth. So let's let them start, and then I'll be next, and I'll keep it really short, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if they actually take me seriously in my advice.
Right.
So
Bush, want to lead us off?
Yeah.
All right, so I think this is a theme with all of our league winners, at least most of ours, is we think running backs are the way to win leagues, right? Running backs are, the engine for your fantasy football team. And the way I look at running back league winners, a lot of people, on Twitter will talk about the Tony Pollards and the Alexander Madisons, but the true league winners actually come early in your drafts, right? Those guys that turn into the Derrick Henrys, the Todd Gurleys, the Dalvin Cooks, the guys that actually win you leagues. And to me, that guy's Cam Akers this year. I think Cam Akers, when you look at his situation, he checks every single box. He's going to be in a top 8 scoring offense with Matthew Stafford coming in. The Rams offensive line was a top 5 unit in run blocking last year. They're going to win 10 or more games. He has a great play caller, great quarterback, great surrounding weapons to take attention away from him. And when you look at Cam Akers' usage down the stretch, he was a guy that was seeing workhorse volume. We all know the New England Patriots game on Thursday Night Football that saw him getting like 30 touches. It didn't really stop there, and it continued into the playoffs, so much so that we saw him getting 96% of the snaps in their final game of the season against the Packers, and Darrell Henderson was nowhere to be found even when he was on the field from weeks 15 to 17. And when you look at Cam Akers again, too, you're thinking about a guy going back to his days at Florida State that was running behind a porous offensive line and was still able to perform, still able to make guys miss, and still able to produce. Now he's in a situation that's the complete opposite of what he dealt with in college, and we can really see that full potential that made him the #1 recruit coming out of high school that year.
We talked about this in our running back rankings, but about the addition of Matt Stafford just making the offense more efficient. I don't think it takes away from potential carries from Akers. I think it makes him more efficient because, this offense is built through the play action. So if there's more of a threat to pass or to be efficient passing, it's going to help Cam Akers. It's going to help the offense overall. So I love it. I love Cam Akers.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on Akers as well. He's probably my second biggest league winner after my guy. And I really think he's going to have that workhorse role and has the potential to have Todd Gurley upside as well. And as we saw in the playoffs, he was a workhorse for them. They trust this guy to be the focal point of the offense, and bringing Stafford in is just going to make that even better.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're talking about Cam Akers, down the stretch, this guy was absolutely winning leagues. You're looking at the usage down the stretch as Corey outlined. This is a 20, 25 touch per game back, and every signal that we've seen this offseason has suggested that Sean McVay knows what he has with Cam Akers and is willing to build this offense around him and Matt Stafford. So I'm all in as well. Corey knows that in general, we value these youthful running backs, and Cam Akers, the guy I'm going to talk about next, they are about to win some leagues, so I'm super excited to get both of them on my team, especially on that turn.
Yeah, and one quick point I want to make on Akers, if anybody has any objections, I know the biggest objections that people have with Cam Akers that think he's going too high or that think he's not worth his ADP is how much receiving work does he get and how much red zone work does he get. Well, in terms of red zone work, Todd Gurley was first in the NFL in 2017, 63 red zone carries, 64 in 2018, also first in the NFL, second in the NFL in 2019 when he was pretty much washed up, and he had 54 that year. So with Todd Gurley's role in mind, Cam Akers and the Rams offense are always an offense that rank among the league leaders in running the ball in the red zone. And the receiving side of things, Malcolm Brown was their main receiving back last year. He vacates all the receiving work, and most notably, he vacates all the routes run from the backfield. He ran twice as many routes as Henderson and Akers combined last year. And when you actually look at Akers' usage down the stretch in terms of his routes run, he was running 25, 30 routes a game, which maybe he didn't get the targets necessarily, but with Matthew Stafford coming in, we know his history of throwing to guys like Theo Riddick. Maybe that target volume goes up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I think the passing volume's an interesting, would be a nice addition, which to a guy who's already going to have a massive season.
Yeah, he's a great pick for me at the end of the first round. I would absolutely love to take that. But let's go on to the next guy here. Danny, who's your guy?
For sure, and as I mentioned, you got Cam Akers at that first round pick. You could also get this guy on the way back. And if you can get both these guys to round out your first, second round, talking about the 11th, 12th pick, I'm absolutely all in on this stack up. I know Corey tweeted out a couple days ago, but I'm talking about Antonio Gibson, running back from the Washington football team. And for a Dallas Cowboys fan to be talking about a Washington football team player, you have to know that this is an objective case, baby. We're looking at the next league-winning running back. We're looking at DCMC, as I like to phrase it. And the way this guy learned the running back position on the fly is just remarkable to think about. We're talking about a 6 foot, 230-pound running back that was a wide receiver in college. He didn't get used as a full-time workhorse until he got to the NFL, and we saw the progression week to week from this guy. And when we're talking about the athletic profile, I mean, this is a 230-pound running back with legit 4.39 speed. Just absolutely remarkable when we're talking about him. He finished as a top 12 running back in his rookie year, top 13 in points per game, despite, get this, 1 snap on third down in the first 10 weeks of the season and 8 total touches on third down throughout the season. So he was a top 13 back without getting any significant third down usage. And when you're actually looking at the situation, we'll get into the usage in a bit as well, but this whole offense was redesigned this offseason. We're talking about going from Taylor Heineke, Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith, to bringing in a legit quarterback that I don't think he's a world beater, but Ryan Fitzpatrick can absolutely be at minimum a league average quarterback from this offense. And when you're talking about redesigning the offense, all of the targets last year, yes, 220 of them were funneled between J.D. McKissic and Logan Thomas. But we've heard all offseason from Ron Rivera that that's not going to be the case this year. JP Finley actually talked about it. The main benefactors of this offense, he believes, are going to be Antonio Gibson and that receiving core, and the main losers of the offseason are going to be the inefficient J.D. McKissic and Logan Thomas from last year. But when you're actually looking at it as well, the offensive line, people don't like giving it credit considering that 3-4 years ago, it was basically a laughingstock of the league. It was always experiencing turnover, always experiencing injury. But they have a legit top 12 unit this year. I mean, they added Sam Cosmi in the draft, second-round pick. I think he's a very fine offensive tackle out of Texas. And you also bring in Charles Leno and Eric Flowers to this unit, who performed pretty well down the stretch last year. I think they have a legit middle-of-the-pack offensive line. And when you're talking about Antonio Gibson, I mean, this is a guy that we saw without third down usage, had 1,100 yards from scrimmage and garnered 214 opportunities last year. If he gets any type of presence on third down, again, which all offseason we've been hearing from Ron Rivera, he thinks that he's going to have the biggest leap of this offense from 2020 going into 2021. We could be very well looking at the next DCMC, as I mentioned. So overall, talking about a guy last year who had 44 targets, 36 receptions, despite being a main receiver in college. If this guy even receives a slight uptick on third down, slight uptick in terms of overall pass catching snaps, I mean, we could be looking at 70 targets. And as I mentioned, this is an 11 touchdown back last year on one of the worst offenses in the league. You don't think that's going to go up if they even remotely perform up to expectation, given the fact that they added Curtis Samuel, who's a very good receiver, added De'Ami Brown, who's one of my favorite receivers in the draft, and added Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think this offense is set to explode in 2021.
I guess you could say he sets the tone, huh?
Oh, yeah, he absolutely sets the tone.
What do you think of the, Smith was so heavy with the usage in short routes. Does Gibson being on the field in third down really have a massive impact in terms of building his overall volume and touches? Just because the way that Ryan Fitzpatrick, if there's a short yardage situation, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a dog. He wants to take that himself. But it's a lot of downfield work. Where do you think it really builds and adds more touches in third down for him? What kind of, is it dump offs? What are the types of plays?
Well, I do think it gets supplemented by the fact that J.D. McKissic last year led all running backs in out wide snaps and slot snaps from the running back position, right, and garnered 110 targets, as I mentioned. And you also got Logan Thomas, who was easily one of the most inefficient tight ends in the league last year and was still able to garner 110 targets. That is 220 targets to easily the 2 least efficient options in this offense this year. I do think Ron Rivera knows better, that coaching staff knows better. We're talking about Scott Turner, who was the son run of North Turner, when CMC really took that sophomore leap. We talked about him as a first-year player, was kind of a sparingly used third down back, and then really took that ascension to a full-fledged workhorse by his second year. I do think Antonio Gibson takes that leap. They realize, hey, this guy struggled in pass protection last year. That's why he wasn't getting the third down usage.
Right.
But if he takes that step this offseason, if he learns as a player, as he learns as a pure running back last year, I think the sky's the limit. I think we could be talking about a guy that by this time next year can be regarded as a top 5 dynasty running back.
Right. No, I like Gibson. I am the only thing I'm worried about. I think the only thing that has me cause for concern is I just don't know about Fitzpatrick involving him as much, just the way that he plays. The turf toe thing is also blows my mind.
That's the only thing
How
that
are
worries
we
me.
still dealing with that this far after the season?
So, and that the turf toe thing is, and something I will say all the time, if Akers, if Gibson, if your guy gets injured prior to the season, off my board.
Yeah.
Same thing that happened last year with Miles Sanders. As soon as he got that hamstring injury in mid-August, that's when you got to pivot, right? Like, I know I love Cam Akers so much. I know we love Antonio Gibson so much. But if this turf toe is a huge injury, is a huge issue, he's missing training camp, missing preseason games, I'm not going to touch him in the second round, because at that point, the risk outweighs the reward, because the risk of a turf toe injury, and some of the doctors that are on Twitter I've seen say, is something that he can play through, but he's probably going to re-aggravate it if he doesn't get surgery on it. So that's one thing that I'm a little bit worried about. And to Danny's point on the pass protection thing, and kind of to your point about Ryan Fitzpatrick checking down, in college, Antonio Gibson was a wide receiver. Yeah. Kenneth Gainwell was the running back that played pass protection snaps. Antonio Gibson, legitimately, when I was watching his film, could not find a single snap of him in pass protection. He didn't play in pass protection in college. It was an entirely new role for him, and it was something that Ron Rivera talked about when they released Adrian Peterson. And releasing Adrian Peterson, they wanted a pony-style running back, much like Christian McCaffrey, to run their backfield, because that's what Ron Rivera and Scott Turner had in Carolina. And Antonio Gibson fits that role. They just had J.D. McKissic as a contingency plan in there, because he was one of the better running backs in pass protection last year. And like Danny said, he was super inefficient on third down. They're not going to continue to throw him the ball like that. Plus, they also didn't have a slot receiver on the team, which is why J.D. McKissic played so much in the slot. Now they have Curtis Samuel, who's going to eat into that role as well. I think it's hard to project to some degree, but I think that eventually you got to realize that the talent will win out. The type of routes that Gibson did run were designed plays like screens. So if they have that wherewithal to get him into the passing game as a rookie last year, they're going to, with a full offseason this year and the fact that he's now a sophomore player learning a new position, they're going to really put more emphasis on trying to get him involved next year.
Yeah, I absolutely love Gibson this year. The only issue I did have was the turf toe injury. And like, I have seen doctors on Twitter say as well, like, this is something that can get re-injured pretty quickly, and it could be something where he doesn't even get hurt throughout the offseason, and then all of a sudden, week 2, turf toe injury, it's back up. So even if he does stay healthy throughout the offseason here, I am going to still be a little bit nervous if he doesn't get that surgery, which is the only reason I would take guys in the same tier, like Akers, or honestly probably even a Swift too, ahead of him, just because they don't have that injury risk that Gibson brings. But as long as this guy stays healthy, he's going to be a very good running back in this offense.
Yeah, I think we don't always draft. You shouldn't be thinking about it every time that you're building your roster and drafting about injury. You should think about an outlook as if they're playing the season. You have to consider it in this situation. I don't understand turf toe injuries. It's something that completely befuddles me. But speaking of, I know these guys have said we're going Akers in the back of the first. We're going Gibson on the turnaround. Well, let's take CeeDee Lamb in the third when we come back. He is one of my favorite wide receivers, especially in this third round spot where he is going right now. This is the guy I would want if I'm going running back in the first 2 rounds. Last season, he was one of the premier slot receivers, incredibly efficient. OTA reports have been telling us that he's getting some more work outside, which I think is a good thing, can only provide some more big play potential. He had a 72.5% success rate on deep routes last season from Matt Harmon's perception. So he's been very, very efficient, can get out of coverage really, really well, even in the short yard situations too. This offense was, with Dak Prescott, was on pace to set records in terms of passing volume, which it can only, I think, will continue this season. I'm not in on Zeke. You guys heard about it in the last episode. I'm very worried about the efficiency from him. So I think the passing volume and the passing offense will be where this team is built. And I know Danny won't want to hear this, but as long as Trayvon Diggs is the number 1 wide receiver in Dallas, there's not going to be a lot of stops made.
Corner.
Yeah, that's what I say.
You said wide receiver.
Sorry, as long as Trayvon Diggs is the number one defensive back for the Cowboys, they're not going to be making a lot of stops defensively. So I think this is going to be a lot of shootouts like we saw in the first 5 games of the season. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is a guy that has the opportunity to be the number one wide receiver in Dallas. I know that as well. It was Amari Cooper's dealing with a bit of an ankle issue coming back in the offseason. So I think I love CeeDee Lamb, especially if I'm going running back in the first 2 rounds. And I think that he has a chance to be the number one. And even if he isn't the number one in the offense, I still think he has, all the possibility in the world to surpass what his ADP is right now, which is right around, I think, wide receiver 16 or so. So I love CeeDee Lamb this year, especially in where he's going.
Yeah, I think this offense is going to be incredible this year. And even though Danny might think this defense is going to get a bit better, I don't think it's going to get much better. This defense is going to give up a lot of points, which means the offense is going to score a lot of points. Dak, very good quarterback. CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, they're going to be a 1A, 1B. I think both these guys have opportunity to be top 10 wide receivers this year. And as Tmack said, like CeeDee Lamb could easily be the guy in this offense.
I should clarify. I like their linebacker group. I like Micah Parsons. I think they made the right decision drafting Micah Parsons, considering how things went in the secondary in the draft with who was it that went?
Horn and Surtain.
Horn and Surtain. And then you didn't want to make the decision on who fell to the Titans there.
Farley.
Farley. So I think it was a good decision going with Parsons there, and they have a great group, I think, up front. It's more, I think teams will know that they're going to, emphasize pushing against the secondary, trying to beat the secondary. So that just creates more plays overall in the game. So I think the passing work is where the Cowboys will live and where other teams will live when they're playing them.
I will say, obviously it's going to sound biased, but I am a little bit more optimistic on the defense than people are, simply because of the schematic change, simply because of the addition of Parsons, and simply because of the young secondary. I do think are going to develop, but again, this is still a bottom half of the league defense. I'm not going to sugarcoat things and say, oh yeah, this is going to be a top 10 unit. No, I'm not. I'm going to be realistic here. But when you're talking about the offense, you mentioned how efficient it's going to be. I've already said multiple times on our channel, I think, again, another biased look, quote unquote, because I'm a Cowboys fan, but I do think Dak isn't only going to win the comeback player of the year, but
MVP?
He was on pace to be the MVP last year.
Yeah.
Those first 5 weeks of the season, we're talking about a guy that was breaking records. He was on pace to shatter records flat out. And in general, when you got a supporting cast like he does with those wide receivers, with the offensive line coming back, we're talking about Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins combining for 2 games played, 2 all-pro level tackles, 2 games played last year. I just think that this offense is going to be at minimum a top 3 unit in the league. And when you're talking about CeeDee Lamb, you're talking about a guy that showed out last year. Despite poorest quarterback play down the stretch when Dak went out, we're talking about a guy that was near 1,000 yards on the season, was on pace for nearly 1,400 when Dak was healthy. I do think that he's poised to build on that rookie season. And you mentioned, if he's getting more snaps on the outside, I do think that they're going to use these wide receivers interchangeably. And when you got a trio like Gallup, Cooper, and Lamb, you can do whatever you want with those 3, because I know Bush is going to argue with this, but I
don't say they're the best trio in the league.
I do think they're the best trio in the league. So
no, Bush is 100% going with Tampa Bay, and that's the right call.
Yeah. At minimum, top 2.
Yeah, and on CeeDee Lamb, I actually prefer Cooper at his ADP. I would rather take Cooper than CeeDee Lamb. When you look at the splits with Dak, who was better with Dak on the field, plus we have the history of Cooper with Dak the past 2 years that he's been on the Cowboys. I think Cooper has the higher ceiling games week in and week out, and we've seen his consistency issues that he had with the Raiders kind of correct themselves now that he's been in Dallas. So I would prefer Cooper over CeeDee Lamb, but I do think this is could be an Evans and Godwin situation from a couple years ago. These guys definitely both could finish in the top 10 or so wide receivers with the amount that this team is going to pass. And I'm with Tmack. I don't really believe in Zeke Elliott this year, so I also, as a result of not really believing in Zeke Elliott and the efficiency of Zeke Elliott, I am going to side with the passing game, which obviously points to those 2 receivers.
Yeah, I think that, and you'll probably have the choice if you're in a certain spot. I know we're going to be we're after this airs or before this airs, we're going to be doing an FSGA draft for Owner's Box, and we've done some mocks, and both those guys are available when we were taken in the 12 spot of a 14-teamer. So you can make the decision on those 2. I was probably trying to decide which one I would prefer, and I went with Lamb, but I think both those guys have a chance to do exactly what you said, that Bucs season from a few years ago. So I love the passing offense in Dallas.
They definitely have very similar ceilings, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's finish it off here. We all agreed we'd save the best one for last. So my guy is Austin Ekeler. You might have heard me talk about it in the running back rankings video. Go watch that if you haven't. But Austin Ekeler, I'm extremely high on him this year. I told this to Tmack in the other video, but where do you guys think Austin Ekeler ranks in the past 2 years in fantasy points per game out of all running backs in the league?
Points per game?
Fantasy points per game, yeah.
Probably like top
I was
5.
about to say 4.
3, behind Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
This guy puts up insane numbers and is still disrespected. Last year, in his 8 games, taking out the one where he had Tyrod Taylor at quarterback and the other one where he got injured like in the first quarter, he averaged 19.1 PPR points per game, and he was at a 16-game pace of 294 touches, 126 targets, 104 receptions, 1,664 total yards, and 6 touchdowns. That would have been the 3rd highest total receptions in NFL history. This guy puts up insane receptions, insane yards. All he needs to go into that like literal top like 2-3 running back range is the touchdowns. If he gets those touchdowns, he is absolutely a league winner. And even if he doesn't, he's still going to be, I think, a top 6 running back in the league. Like the amount of opportunity he's going to have in this offense, it's such a good offense. They just brought in Joe Lombardi, who has clearly used Alvin Kamara in the correct role. And he's even compared him to other guys like Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles. Austin Ekeler is going to be so involved in this offense, and I don't see any way he doesn't finish as a top 6 running back.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys should go because we did this on the last episode, but I would love to hear what you guys think about Ekeler.
Yeah, we were just going to say, I mean, the viewers who have watched our channel before know that we're all in on Austin Ekeler. I mean, he was a my guy for us last year. This offense has only gotten better. Justin Herbert comes in, has a legitimate shot to finish as a top 6 quarterback this year. And in general, and you're talking about up-and-coming offenses, I don't see a scenario where this team doesn't rank top 10 in points per game with the additions they made on the offensive line, with the play of Justin Herbert, and with obviously the high funnel of targets between Austin Ekeler and Keenan Allen on this team. I agree. In a PPR format, you could be talking about this guy as a top 5 running back at minimum. And in general, I'm a lot higher on him as well compared to the industry. I have him as my RB 8.5 PPR. In full PPR, he's going to rank a little bit higher than that as well. But yeah, I'm all in on Austin Ekeler, and I do think that we saw it last year when he was on the field. I mean, unfortunately, he had to suffer that injury against Bush's Bucks, but I think he's poised to break leagues this year.
Yeah, we also took out Saquon Barkley 2 years ago, or last year too. So I mean, we've been taking out a lot of players. So the thing that I have with Austin Ekeler, you said if he gets the touchdowns. My thing is that I don't think he will, and that makes him a little bit lower of a ceiling than the RB overall RB1 finish that he definitely could see if he were to get a 15 touchdown season, but. The thing that keeps him behind guys like Gibson, behind guys like Taylor, behind guys like Akers in my rankings is that touchdown ceiling, and the fact that he isn't a guy that's going to get 100 and even 180 carries probably on the season. He's probably going to only have 175 carries, but he's going to contribute very much in the passing game. The one thing that I will say though in favor of Austin Ekeler is the Chargers might have the most improved offensive line in the entire league. Rashawn Slater in the first round was a left tackle that many people around the league and a lot of analysts that I respect had ranked higher than Penei Sewell. So this is a guy that...
Shout out to the Bengals because you guys are morons by taking Jamar Chase instead of Penei Sewell, and giving my Chargers Rashawn Slater was the greatest thing of
you're a Chargers fan too.
Yeah, of many years of the draft. Besides Derwin James, who can't stay on the field. But anyways, continue.
Right, and we as a Bucs fan, we wanted Derwin James instead of Vita, but it worked out. So at the center position, they bring in an all-pro center in Corey Linsley from last year, and they bring in Matt Filer, who was on the Steelers' offensive line a couple of years ago when they were actually a respectable unit. So they add 3 veteran pieces that are 2 veteran pieces, 1 high-end rookie piece that should all make a big impact in what was the 30th ranked offensive line last year. So that's good news for Herbert. That's good news for Ekeler. That's good news for Keenan Allen. It's good news for Mike Williams, truthers, if anybody still exists that's out there. I know
He's
a popular sleeper for a lot of people. I mean, I think we're getting a little recency bias out of it because Corey Davis and Devontae Parker have shown the 50-year breakout the past couple of years. It's not usually likely to see something like that, but it definitely could happen because, everything's lining up for the offense to be really good this year. And Ekeler, at minimum, I think him and Nick Chubb are probably the safest players you can draft in the first 15 picks.
So quick thing, we talked about this in the last time, but you guys should tell me if this is a sticky stat. So 37 on rushes or on plays inside the 5-yard line. It was rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. His success rate is his touchdown rate is 37%. The rest of the NFL is 45%. So would you say that is a sticky stat, or is that an indication of Ekeler inside the red zone and around the goal line?
I actually do think it's more of his game. That it's not like, so a lot of people will say touchdowns are fickle, you can't predict them year over year. I think you can, to be honest. When you look at certain running backs like Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara, they get in the end zone. Like, what we say it every year, we're like, Alvin Kamara can't score 20 touchdowns again, and he still does anyway. So certain running backs are just good at getting into the end zone. Austin Ekeler also isn't used on the goal line as much as he should be as the feature back of that offense. They use, guys like Josh Kelly and stuff like that in that role instead. So I think it is more of an Austin Ekeler stat, which is why I think that ceiling of, the overall RB1 probably isn't there for him, but he definitely still could finish top 5 due to the receiving volume that he's going to see.
The question is, are Josh Kelly and Justin Jackson better goal line backs than Austin Ekeler?
Probably not, but that doesn't matter what we think, right?
Yeah.
It matters what the Chargers coaching staff
Clearly
thinks.
Anthony Lynn thought so.
Yes,
but,
right.
But the question is, will Joe Lombardi? And I don't think he will. I think the touchdowns will definitely be the deciding factor.
He just needs to be. He only needs to be an average.
If he scores
touchdown
10 touchdowns, like 7 rushing, 3 receiving,
it's like
then he'll be a top 5 running back.
I think it's even higher.
We're not. I don't think we're asking for a lot touchdown wise from Austin Ekeler this season.
But usually when you want to see that big ceiling out of a running back, and I did an entire video on running back league winners and what it takes to finish as a running back, on average, the guys that average 20 PPR points per game on a season had 17 touchdowns on the season, right? And that's going to be hard for Austin Ekeler to get to. He would need some extremely big plays, in my opinion, to get there.
We saw that last year, though. He only had 3 touchdowns, and he still averaged 19 fantasy points per game. He would have been the RB5 on the
Right, but
year.
he had 3 touchdowns 2 years ago, too. So this is kind of like a trend for him.
2 years ago, he did score a lot more receiving touchdowns. I think he had 9.
So he had 3 rushing touchdowns 2 years ago. Melvin Gordon was in the backfield, but this is what I mean, though. It's going to be hard for him to get to 17 touchdowns on the season to reach that truly league winner value. If he gets there, it'll be because he gets so many targets and so many big plays in the receiving game, in my opinion.
That's fair.
I mean, it's a lot of the, if you look at the previous season from Austin Ekeler, I wouldn't be worried. I've shared our videos out, and people are talking about, if he's only ever had 550 yards rushing, or he's only, he's injury prone. Well, he played 10 games last year, but other seasons he's played 16. He's not an injury prone player. I wouldn't worry about those kinds of narratives that come just because of recency bias.
He's going to get 1,000 receiving yards too.
Yeah. And I watched the play he got injured on. It was like somebody landed, I think Jordan Whitehead landed on his ankle in a weird range, or he tried to extend and stay up, and his hamstring bent. It was a weird injury. It was a freak injury. I don't expect Austin Ekeler to be an injury prone player.
Yeah, and when we're looking at the usage of him, we're talking about Joe Lombardi coming in. We're talking about the way he was used last year as well. In general, this is a guy, over the last 3 seasons, 36 catches of 15 plus yards. This guy is not only people like to associate these receiving backs as, we just check it down to them, they'll make something happen. No. This guy's split out wide. This guy's used in a variety of packages. This is a guy that is able to truly stretch the field from the running back position, which him and Alvin Kamara, and we've talked about it a little bit with potentially DeAndre Swift if he gets that usage in Detroit. We're looking at the 2 elite premier receiving talents at the running back position. So while Corey said he may not finish as the RB1 overall, again, I mentioned in any type of PPR format, this is probably a near lock for top 5 if he gets 10, 12 total touchdowns on the season. And in general, if I'm getting that at the back end of the first round, I'm taking that every single time.
Yeah.
If I can get him, sometimes you can get him to pair with a guy that I do think has this league-winning ceiling, like Akers or like Gibson. You can pair, any one of the 3 running backs that we talked about together at the most cases at the end of your drafts. And then if you take a guy like Akers and he's too risky for you, you can pair him with a guy like Ekeler, who you pretty much know that you're getting a locked and loaded top 8 running back, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. Like we're just talking about, you could probably have three of our 4 league winners in your first 3 rounds of your draft. So make sure you put that to use. Again, thank you guys for joining us. Comment which one of these 4 guys you'd prefer the most, considering where their ADP is at. But
go check these guys out on their channel. We're going to be doing a video on theirs as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Check us out there. Subscribe, comment. Thank you guys for tuning in.